Well, now to discuss who came out on top of the debate. Joining us is the former director of Press Advance under President Obama and currently still the host of the brilliant Press Advance podcast, Johanna Maska. Johanna, great of you to make time for us today. I know you'll be busy sort of summing up what you saw last night, but your initial takeaways, any surprises for you?
Well, I was initially very worried about how this debate would go because I worked with President Obama in 2008, and he had more than 20 debates against Hillary Clinton before he ever had a debate against John McCain. But last night, Kamala Harris showed up for that debate, and she did exactly what she needed to do. She talked about issues that matter to Democrats. She got her Democratic base completely motivated. I mean, people were really nervous. And they, last night, in watching her, in watching the confidence in which she was able to deliver her message against Donald Trump, she reassured Democrats that she is the right candidate to take on Donald Trump. This after, of course, Joe Biden was on the debate stage against Donald Trump and did not show Democrats that. So Democrats are feeling pretty good in America after that debate, having seen Kamala Harris on that stage. Republicans, maybe not so much. A lot of them are blaming the moderators of the debate for Trump's performance. But I think you can only go so far with that, given Donald Trump brought up topics that they weren't even talking about on the debate stage, and some conspiracy theories that led a lot of Americans to kind of scratch their heads.
We'll get the Republican viewpoint shortly about that. But just, you're a host of a podcast. I'm a host as well of a show. We know what it's like to moderate conversations. How do you think they did perform, the moderators?
I loved that they didn't make anything about themselves. It was all about the substance in the debate. I can cede the point that there should have been more discussion of the economy. I wish Kamala Harris would have forcefully taken the inflation argument. A lot of Americans are very concerned about inflation. Inflation is a worldwide effect of closing down the economy for the pandemic, and really showed that Donald Trump was the one who mismanaged a pandemic, led PPP spending in America, all of the COVID spending efforts. A lot of that went through banks and led to massive fraud and abuse, more fraud and abuse than Americans have seen spent in the war in Ukraine. And if she had effectively tied that to Trump, he is not a fiscal conservative. So I think there could have been more discussion of the economy, because that is very important. But Kamala Harris did bring up issues that matter to younger voters, because we see it taking jobs: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, kind of the future of America. We didn't see so much of that from Donald Trump. His was kind of the same playbook that he's used. The reason that America is struggling, he argues, is because of immigrants. Immigrants historically in America have actually added to our economy, not subtracted from our economy. But the most puzzling thing that he said last night was he brought up this just completely false story about Haitian migrants in a small town in Ohio stealing and eating people's pets, which really had people, not sure exactly where this was going. A lot of times candidates will run to the far extremes of the party when they're in a primary, and then when they get into the general election, they try to appeal to a more moderate voter. That is not what Donald Trump did last night. That is what Kamala Harris did last night.
Johanna, thank you for giving us your viewpoint. I'll come back to you on a few of those policy points, but I'm pleased to say we can now bring in our Republican viewpoint on this. Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes joins us. She was the former member of Trump's White House transition team. Thank you very much. And I was just discussing there, with Johanna, Jan, that there have been accusations of bias, of course, about the ABC News moderators, how they handled the debate. That was sort of expected because, it was almost like people were prepared for them to have some sort of bias and then want to prove that to be the case. Johanna's saying she felt like they handled it pretty fairly, but there were other topics she wished they'd covered. How did you think the debate was handled?
Well, I think it was 3 against 1, and they did constantly fact check Trump and not Kamala, but I am against the kind of debate where the candidate only criticizes the other candidate and you don't know where that candidate really stands. Because when she was asked the question very pointedly that Bidenomics has not been working, she just danced over it. And there were other times she'd say, and I'll get to it, but then she stuck with just her superficial points. And I really wanted to know what Kamala Harris actually stood for. And I didn't get that at all from her statements. It was generalizations that you had heard through the DNC convention as well.
And in the spirit, I will come to you, Johanna, on responding to that. But in the spirit of fairness, as a moderator of the debate, just like we saw last night, I'm going to come to Jan one more time and just talk about how you felt Trump then performed, because we just focused there on Harris. But some are saying Trump felt underprepared on stage. Do you think that's right? Oh, I think we've just lost it.
Sorry, my dog was just about to do a squeaky toy.
Oh,
I had to make sure that wasn't going to happen. I'm so sorry. I actually thought Trump looked tired. I also thought he was very consistent about how worried he is about the country and how angry he is about the way the Biden administration has been running things. I don't look at these debates as who performed the best. I know that is what the media is looking at, but I wanted to know, did Trump get his points in? Did he miss other points? And I thought he was actually far more respectful to her than I had anticipated.
That's an interesting point of view. I had the same sort of takeaway, and I wondered whether, and I don't want to sort of harp on too much about the woman point, but with three women here talking about this, you're looking at the possibility of having a first female president of the US. And we heard before the debate that they would just treat each other as candidates, as opponents, rather than, you know, thinking about gender. But did you find he was more respectful than, say, he was towards Hillary Rodham Clinton, Jan?
Oh, he had good lines for Hillary. He did. You'd be in jail, you know. Yeah, but and they had a repartee. Hillary and Trump really had a repartee going between them in all of the debates. Kamala was focused on getting her practice points across, and she did that well. I don't think that. Well, I happen to know from looking at X, formerly Twitter, last night, and Getter and Truth Social, people were dropping out of the debate at least a quarter to a half a way through. They just either thought it was painful listening to her or it wasn't going anywhere, and they didn't feel that the moderators were objective enough.
Interesting. I mean, Johanna, let's come back to you on those initial points that Jan made about not really finding out who Kamala was. And that's a consistent kind of criticism we hear about Kamala Harris. Who is she? Does she stand for enough? Is she strong enough? And some, despite the polls showing they swung in her favour after the debate, saying they didn't still get a clear idea of who she was. Do you think it's fair?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of Republicans saying this, and I just find it a little hypocritical because Donald Trump literally changes his minds on things between when he's briefed by his team and when he makes a decision. I mean, literally, they're prepping something different. His former defense secretary talked about this, and then he makes a totally different decision. So, you know, with Kamala Harris, she actually, in California, she was a prosecutor. So she was too conservative for a lot of my more progressive friends. She has been more right than a lot of people in California. And, you know, while the last time around she ran, she did talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously she's concerned about climate change, and she did have concerns about fracking. She has been pretty consistent now that she wants all options on the table, and she wants us to transition to a clean economy, which is very important. You know, on this Trump was talking about, things that matter to the American people, it is a dark picture that he painted of America. He talked about America dying. He talked about, migrants overrunning our cities. Two things cannot be true. American is strong. First, America is very strong. That is why immigrants are trying to get to America. They are risking their lives and they are dying to get to America because we still have that American dream. And that, if Donald Trump wants to take that message and he believes that America is such a terrible country, I think he's going to be sorely disappointed because the American people do not all believe that, especially our young people. We want a politician who's going to take on the issues that are going to matter to us: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, future of our economy. And that is what Kamala Harris showed that she's going to do, and in a bipartisan fashion, for anyone who wants to come to the side of reason and normality and not talk about America as a dying country, because we are not.
Jan, coming to you on that, because there is talk of Trump trashing America as part of his campaign strategy. Do you think he's doing that?
Well, I wouldn't use the word trashing, but if you look at the amount of inflation, the prices of food, the fact that people have to give up certain things and can't put food on the table for their family, the fact that the price of petrol has doubled or tripled, when you look at that and how Bidenomics hasn't worked, that's what he's talking about. The other thing is the fact that, yes, we are a country that was built on immigrants, but they came in legally. They paid their dues. They did it the right way. These people are crossing the border, and every town has become a border town. And even though they are saying crime hasn't gone up, which is gaslighting the public, when you look at the amount of deaths and rapes and burglaries, we really need to face the fact that we have illegal aliens that have come into our country. And that is the part that Trump was emphasizing. Also, I look at results. The economy, even after the pandemic, Trump was able to start to bring the economy back. The economy, in terms of people being able to live and the cost of things, it's over $4,000 now more a year that it's costing people to live, and wages haven't gone up. So it's difficult, and he's presenting reality. He wasn't interested in presenting joy and a happy picture, because if you look at the basics, that's what he dealt with when he came in 2016, and that's what he'll deal with in 2024.
Johanna, coming to you, did Kamala do enough to convince voters that she is actually going to be strong in immigration? As we're hearing there from Jan, immigration and economy, as the world knows, is what this election is going to be fought on. And there are American voters that feel like the Biden administration has been weak on immigration. Did Kamala seize the opportunity to prove otherwise?
This whole argument that immigration just got bad under Biden is just false. My entire adult life, and I've been in politics for 20 plus years, no one has managed to reform the immigration system. This notion that all of these people came in legally before is because you came to Ellis Island, and if you weren't sick, you came into our country. So this, what we have seen is the Congress's inability to address migration and migration needs and our immigration system in a holistic way. We've got people who have fought alongside Americans who are still here waiting on asylum cases. We need reform. She correctly, whether it was enough information for voters is a different story, but she correctly pointed to they negotiated a deal with the Senate that was more hawkish than anything Democrats would agree to, that gave them more border control, but also had money for asylum cases to turn on those court systems. And the Republicans were the ones who spiked it. And not because it wasn't a good deal, because Donald Trump couldn't own it. And that's a problem. This is the thin argument that the Republicans are making. I live in a border state. I live in a border state that wants our immigrants to come to America legally so that we can have safe cities. But you can't just blame migrants on all of this crime. And crime statistics are down. As much as people want to say that we're living in a terrible place in America, I mean, the context is skewed. When you go anywhere else in the world, you realize how lucky and how blessed you are to live in America, where we do have safe communities and we do have police forces who respond, teachers who teach our kids. And when we undermine these things, when we undermine institutions, it is to our detriment. I want to see both parties stop, but I will say that Kamala Harris, for her part, I think did a very good job of talking about the America that's possible when we turn our backs on this inaction that has been my entire adult life with Congress.
Thanks, Johanna. Jan, just staying with immigration, because I think it was just before you joined us, we were talking about the comments that Donald Trump made about Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs. That's one of the lines that has taken the headlines. You know, eating pets in the town of Springfield is what he spoke about in the debate.
It's been on TV. It's been on TV. This is not, Donald Trump does not pull things out of the air to make a comment. This has been all over social media. It has, and the residents of Springfield have complained about it. But I'd also like to go to a point that Johanna brought up, which is something I share, and it is a frustration with Congress. And when I was the global vice president of Republicans overseas, we had a congressman here giving a talk, and I asked him, why is immigration still on the table and you never resolve it? And he gave me a very truthful answer. He said, if we get it resolved, then both sides have nothing to campaign on. And they have done nothing for 30 years. We've got this continuing resolution that keeps going, and it is the way the uniparty gets to avoid dealing with things. So I very much agree with her frustration on that. I would say that I wouldn't put a negative on the way things are being presented. I think Johanna has presented a very upbeat message, but Donald Trump is talking about the reality that a lot of people, a good 2/3 of the country, is feeling. And that's what his concern is.
Johanna, your response to that? Reality. It's a reality check is what Jan's saying, rather than just sort of endless positivity.
I grew up in Galesburg, Illinois. Galesburg, Illinois is a place that lost Maytag. It lost manufacturing. That manufacturing is critical to our economy. It's also critical to our national security that we have a strong manufacturing base. Both parties are responsible for that loss. Both parties let manufacturing walk away and didn't think about the national security ramifications. 100%, we need to solve for some of these issues. The jobs that we have in America are not the jobs of yesterday, and we need those strong jobs. Now, we also, I believe, in America have so much opportunity to solve problems for America and for the globe, and not turn our back on the globe, not say that migrants are the problem. We've got problems around the world, but if we could come together and actually work on some of these problems, America is still the strongest country. And I'm sorry, but I do not want to live in a world in which China or Russia is the one that's leading the world economy. So yes, 100%, I understand Americans are hurting. Those are many of my family members, many of the people I grew up with who are hurting still because of inaction, because of bad policy. We have to address that. Do I trust one leader to address it whole stop without any input? Absolutely not. That is why I am troubled when Donald Trump only believes and only listens to himself. And I will say, Kamala Harris, for all of her issues that she may have, and I'll admit, every person, every politician has issues. She listens, and that's what we need.
Not to hop on about the cats and dogs, Jan, but I realised that that information was spread around social media and it was on certain television. But the ABC moderator in the debate, whether you agree with them or not, fact-checked Donald Trump at that point and said, you know, we've reached out to the town manager of Springfield, Ohio, and he's denied hearing any of these reports. And Trump dismissed that and said, well, you know, what's he got to say? And it was on TV and it was... But do you, rather than sort of focusing on the accuracy of that, if you don't agree with the moderator and the way they fact-checked, what about the fact that he seemed to get distracted in sort of sensationalist ideas rather than hitting policy points? Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, I think that Donald Trump is very good. If you even go back to his tweets, he used them in 4 different strategic ways. 1 was to float ideas. 2 was to head off a problem before it became a problem, to get feedback from the public. The 3rd was to use it as a distraction. And the 4th was as a deflection. I mean, what was happening was that it's almost a way to bring comic relief to the tension of what's going on and get them to refocus back on the serious issues.
Johanna, what do you make of it as a strategy?
I don't think we need comic relief. I mean, to the point that Americans are hurting.
I didn't
we
say
need
comic
facts.
relief. I said it's like breaking the tension.
Well, and look, I understand. Like a lot of times, Democrats will say Donald Trump is terrible. You know, he doesn't have any ideas. And sometimes he does have ideas. So I understand the frustration that Republicans have. But I mean, the problem with this report is, yeah, you saw it on TV. Maybe Fox News is reporting something, but it's not true. Just because someone says the sky is purple doesn't mean the sky is purple. There needs to be an investigation. In a world where we've got artificial intelligence, and I'm watching, I mean, Drudge has this photo of Trump in his airplane hugging cats and geese. And, you know, artificial intelligence can be really comic relief, but we need the truth. And from the president of the United States, the former president of the United States, to talk about citing reports from the news. He heard it on the news and not actually investigating it and talking to the people who are on the ground dealing with these issues is part of the problem that people have with Donald Trump.
Let's move on from the past.
If I could just say about that is that what the video showed was the woman being arrested and the woman declaring that she had eaten that animal. So this is not a report. This was the police there arresting the woman in action. And I know that people will want to twist it because it does seem so weird and sensational. And look how much time we're spending on it here when actually there are other things that we could be talking about, but it becomes a distraction.
Indeed. Look, let's indeed move on from the cats and dogs because Johanna made an interesting point, Jan, as we started the conversation about Democrats uniting now behind Harris, where, you know, it got to the point with Biden and the previous debate where Democrats, excuse me, weren't necessarily united behind him, as we saw he then stood by. How about Republicans? You've been with the Republicans overseas. You and I have spoken in London before with you in that capacity. Do you think Republicans are uniting behind Trump?
Oh, not only that, but the fact that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has joined the campaign, will be one of the key leaders on his transition team. That what that has done is it has brought a whole new group of people in that are so excited about the fact that we might actually be bringing our country closer together. I mean, you've got a Democrat and a Republican. I mean, the Camelot Democrat. And it was a very tough decision for RFK Jr. to make. But people are absolutely thrilled by it because here's the other thing, and this was a worry of mine. Trump has been very supportive of Operation Warp Speed, which was the vaccine. And it has some controversy around it, but there were some people that were concerned and on the fence if they were going to vote for him. RFK Jr. coming in and dealing with Fauci and all of the problems around our whole healthcare, that has put so many people at ease. And people are excited because they actually believe we might move a bit more to the center. Now, I will tell you that the people who worked on Project 2025, which Trump is rightfully having nothing to do with, is that they're upset that what is happening is that people are coalescing more to the center and not staying strongly to the right. And I think tough luck for them, because they need to get with the times. If we're going to bring our country together, I mean, even listening to Johanna and some of the issues, if she and I were to sit and have a cup of coffee, I think we would find commonality on quite a few things. Let's take the candidates out of it, especially in Congress and dealing with the problems. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for bringing the country together, and Trump has wanted to do that. When he didn't participate in the first debate and he did an interview with Tucker Carlson, he made a comment. He said, I want to be the president for all the people. And we know the media likes to, say no, and he's divisive. But every step that he keeps making is to move more to the center. People have been upset with the RNC platform because for 40 years, they were so anti-abortion and anti-IVF. And Trump has come out very strongly in support of IVF and in support for limited, including rape, incest, or at the risk of the mother's life. And that might have upset some of the hard right, but that is where our country is at. And Trump he's always had his finger on the pulse. That's why he won in 2016. And I think that's why he has so much support now.
Jan, that's given me so much I want to talk to Johanna about. The idea of Trump moving more to the centre ground on some points being one thing you've raised, distancing himself from Project 2025, that sort of conservative, controversial manifesto, I think backed by the Heritage Foundation. You say correctly so. But actually, the one thing I want to ask Johanna about was your reaction. I saw there when Jan was talking about RFK Jr. and his healthcare policy. Is that something you'd like to see in America, Johanna?
No. This notion that Donald Trump has his finger on the pulse. I mean, I grew up in Galesburg, Illinois. Like I said, that's, real America. Donald Trump lives in a penthouse in New York. So his finger on the pulse. I just, I agree with you, Jan. If you and I sat down, I am absolutely sure we could find so many areas of agreement. My distrust for people who live in penthouses and say that they're connected with Americans is, because it's kind of hard to be connected with Americans when you're coming up and down an escalator. RFK Jr. is a troubled child of a famous politician. He had multiple drug arrests. He had issues with women. To me, he's more like Hunter Biden than he is like a politician that I want to emulate. The vaccine, I think that the Trump administration, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper talked about how he and HHS were working on this. Obviously, it was miraculous speed that they got a vaccine to market. I hate that it was politicized. I hate that when Trump was in office, I had friends saying that they weren't going to take the vaccine because it was invented by a Republican. And when Trump left office and the Democrat rolled it out, they were all in line for the vaccines. I hate that these things became political because it's a public health epidemic. But I do love that America was the one first to the market with a drug that could save lives during a global pandemic, and we'll need that innovation again. The RFK Jr. coming to Donald Trump's defenses, maybe it's a small slither of Americans who are going to follow that, and I completely understand the Americans who have concerns about our healthcare system, about big pharma, about the influence that they have. I think we should discuss that. But RFK Jr. as their poster child, be careful who you root for when you've got a guy who had a dead bear that he left in Central Park and thought that there would be no consequences to his action. If Galesburg, Illinois, if you left a dead bear in the middle of the park, there would be consequences to your actions. And that's, I think, the out of touch nature of people who grew up in very different situations than I did.
Look, Jan, just coming back to you on that, but we're going to have to wrap things up soon. But you talked about gaining RFK Jr., of course, as a supporter, uniting Republicans. You gained Tulsi Gabbard as well on the Republican side, but lost the Cheneys, Liz Cheney and her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, and various other Republicans who said they couldn't back Trump. What does that feel like to you as a Republican overseas?
Oh, well, good. I think that Liz Cheney has been an absolute traitor. And you know, that is an old regime. That is a neoconservative regime. And they have not moved with the times, with the people. They are part of the elites. And that is it's the elites that fear and dislike Trump the most. Because actually you could say something about him being in a penthouse, but he grew up on construction sites. He's always been called the blue collar billionaire. He does have his finger on the pulse of people. There are many, many wonderful stories, not that I'll get into them because I'm not here to promote him. I am here to really talk about the strength of the platform that the RNC has, and that Trump will carry that forward, and that RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy, you look, Elon Musk, who wants to come in and get rid of all of the inefficiencies in our government. And in fact, do you know, we lose over $60 billion a year because agencies do not renew their software. I mean, we get Elon in there. Look at that team. They all come with a set of skills that can focus on the issues that are the real problems of today.
Ladies, just wrapping up, and you know, I don't want to minimize any of this because it's been a fascinating discussion, but come on, Taylor Swift has come out and endorsed Kamala Harris in the hours after the debate. Some are saying it's actually going to swing the election. Do you agree with that, Johanna?
No, I think people are going to make their own decisions. Swifties, you know, very welcome to vote for Kamala Harris, but I think they do as much as Elon Musk's endorsement. They're only going to show like what you already felt. You're just going to be reinforced. And the notion of Elon Musk saving America when he couldn't even save X, when he had plenty of money to do it, I just don't believe it.
Does it change anything for you, Jan, Taylor Swift coming out in support for Harris?
No, we knew it was going to happen. And it's really no different than when she came out against Trump in 2020. So, you know, I think that if you look at Trump's reach on TikTok, which hit 1 billion, he's influencing the younger people. They're getting a sense of him, and they'll be able to make their own decisions. People are getting a lot wiser because politics is just permeated every day of our lives. It's not like when I was growing up that you didn't discuss religion and politics. Now, all we do is discuss those two subjects.
You're absolutely right on that one, Jan. I can agree with you there. Look, Jan Halper-Hayes and Johanna Maska, it's been great speaking to you both. Thank you.